you will realize that this was a process that started thousands of years ago. And it started at the garden. It started when Satan very powerfully and effectively caused the people of God to rebel against him and instilled within them a very easily discernible nature that carried in with every new birth into this world. The desire and the appetite for sin continues to grow and continues to get ugly and ugly and ugly and ugly and ugly. And now we are at a place where, as we approach the end, the culmination of all of the efforts that Satan has made over the last several thousand years has come to a point where now we are looking at the kind of blitz that we never thought we would actually see. And it is something that should not surprise us under any circumstance. Folks, what I'm talking about is true. What I'm talking about is real. And what I'm talking about is something that should stand as an eye-opening source to get you to begin to see things differently. When we talk about the problem that we are facing right now in this world, it's significant, right? We are seeing evidence of complete catastrophic failure in this world and undoubtedly in this country all over the place. And the number one question that is oftentimes imposed is, how do we stop it or how do we accelerate it? Believe it or not, those are the two camps of thoughts that are going on. And we also have to stop for just one moment to talk about what is very obvious, and that is the fact that we are undoubtedly in the last days. No matter where you go, we continue to find observable evidence that continues to point to us that we are in a time and a day that we can clearly say our Lord could come at any second. Believe it or not, what the things that we are seeing right now is bad, but it may very well get much worse. That's kind of a difficult concept to explain to people because it's hard to think about things getting worse than where they're at. But I also think it's also important to understand that this was not just something that happened overnight. It feels like it happened overnight. It feels like something that just happened out of the blue and we have no idea where it came from. But the reality of it is, this was something that was in the works for a very, very long time. I'm reminded of a tree that is grown prominently in Asia. And this tree is really interesting in that for the first several years, the person that is responsible for planting the tree has to do a lot of babying, has to do a lot of work, has to do all kinds of things only to not observe it even coming out of the ground, believe it or not. They put the seed for this in, and the reality of it is they are supposed to do all kinds of things to the soil, all kinds of preparation, a very strict regimen of watering, a strict regimen of vitamins, a strict regimen of all kinds of other things that has to be deployed. And then what happens is a year goes by and there is no observable growth. Then another year goes by and there is no observable growth. I think it's year 6. You begin to see a little bit of evidence that there is something in the ground, and then it stays that way for several years, and I forgot the name of this plant. And then basically what happens is by the time you get to around year 10, the tree comes out of the ground and grows a stupid amount of feet. Some ridiculous number, like 45 feet in the first year, that it actually starts to manifest growth. The funny thing about it was, it wasn't like it just all of a sudden had a great year and grew to 50 feet in that one year. The reality of it is, all of the work that had gone into the previous years is exactly what caused that tree to be successful. As a matter of fact, this is why this tree is known as a remarkably expensive tree, has been for quite some time, and that all directly relates to the fact what we continue to see is marked evidence that it's never about what happens instantly over a second or two. It's always related to the substantial amount of work that has to be put into the picture in order to facilitate rapid growth. So many people right now are looking at what is happening as we speak with the current world in which we live. I have a lot of people that say that all of this is happening out of nowhere. People are looking at all of this and saying, I cannot believe this is happening. They have all kinds of theories as into when it happened. People say, oh, well, this happened when the situation with the pandemic started. That's what kind of kicked all of this off. I would argue that that is a false statement. I would argue that what happened with the pandemic and the lockdowns were accelerants to the things that we are actually seeing. But I would actually argue that a tremendous amount of work went into the process that led to the rapid growth of wickedness that we are seeing right now. And in reality, there were a lot of things that had to be implanted in order to lead us to that space. Now, if you stop for 1 second and you consider the world that we are looking at, and when you stop for a moment to consider how ugly things have become, you will realize that this was a process that started thousands of years ago. And it started at the garden. It started when Satan very powerfully and effectively caused the people of God to rebel against him and instilled within them a very easily discernible nature that carried in with every new birth into this world. The desire and the appetite for sin continues to grow and continues to get ugly and ugly and ugly and ugly and ugly. And now we are at a place where, as we approach the end, the culmination of all of the efforts that Satan has made over the last several thousand years has come to a point where now we are looking at the kind of blitz that we never thought we would actually see, and it is something that should not surprise us under any circumstance. Folks, what I'm talking about is true, what I'm talking about is real, and what I'm talking about is something that should stand as an eye-opening source to get you to begin to see things differently. You have to understand that the purse strings, the puppet strings, and every other strings that are tied to the very coordinated efforts of the enemy continue to be spiritually based, and the very moment we choose to stop recognizing the spiritual connection to this will be the very moment that we completely give the battle and, yes, the war to the devil.